Good morning. Welcome. I am Monica Pitrelli. I'd just like to invite all of the panelists up. If you've been here for at least an hour, you will recognize some of these faces. Athanasios, you were just up here. If you would please come back up, speaking on behalf of Mactan-Cebu International Airport. Paul Griffiths, CEO of Dubai Airports, please join us. Also, Ching Kiat from Changi Airport Group. Now, two new faces that will be joining us today. Vivian Cheung, she's the COO of Airport Authority Hong Kong. And then we have Sanjeev Kumar. He's VP of SITA's Airports, Borders and Communications and Data Exchange. Please welcome our panelists to the stage. Welcome, everyone. So I first want to talk about, for most of us in the travel industry, the word that has dominated most of our lives for the past couple of years, professionally, maybe even personally, but it's recovery. But we are soon to, those days will soon end. But Paul, for you, they already have, and early congrats on that. And then, when we get back to that theoretical normal that we have been talking about for so long, we will just blaze right past it, right? We will go right into those growth projections that you were talking about this morning, Cheung, Kiat. And so, I want to talk about expansion and infrastructure first. Let's go big before we go into small. And CAPA estimates about 425 airports globally right now are undergoing major expansion plans. Another 225 new airports are being built, a lot of those right here in Asia Pacific. So, Vivian, I really want to start with you today because what's happening at Hong Kong, for anybody who hasn't been there recently, pretty big changes underway. And I'm wondering if you can walk us through what is happening on the ground in Hong Kong.
Sure, and actually we start 5 or 6 years ago, and setting out this plan to transform our city airport into an airport city. And of course, that combined the basic is that we're going to expand our capacity from the 2 runway to 3 runway. So we can host 120 million passenger and 10 million tons of cargo. Before pandemic, we have 75 million passenger and 5 million tons of cargo. In fact, you know, the terminal designs for 45 million passenger, we squeeze 75 million passenger, which is really like what Paul said, you know, we have to make the airport more efficient in order to, you know, processing faster, using time to exchange for space. So first is to expand our capacity. Secondly is that, of course, that we build our process and model to enhance our process to allow more business come in. And to help us not to increase charges to airline in order to fund our capacity enhancement, we also diversify our business to put more commercial type of business in the airport. Therefore, within our airport city plan, there's also a very important element, Sky City. Within the Sky City, the key feature is 11 Sky, and that have a large space to entertain. It will be the biggest indoor shopping, dining, entertainment center in Hong Kong. And that helped us to capture three type of visitor. One is a local resident Hong Kong, and one is, of course, people fly through Hong Kong to everywhere in the world. The third is that our airport is very closely connected to the GBA, Greater Bay Area, where that there's 85 million residents live there. So they can cross the bridge half hour. You know, so we capture that kind of visitor to enhance and diversify our revenue generation, which can help us to fund all this project. So we haven't stopped during the pandemic. The project continue. In fact, most of them will complete this year and next year. And in the next 5 years, we have even more to push out. But we can talk about later. But that's what happened right now.
And so that really taps into this idea of this changing role of airports. You know, if even today, if you ask somebody, and definitely say 20 years ago, if you ask somebody, why do you use an airport? It's to get on and off of a plane. But really, we're seeing that start to change. And I'm seeing a lot of this happening in India right now. But I think, Cheung, Kiat, you could probably talk about this. Here in Singapore, you have people going out to the Jewel, not because they're going anywhere, they're taking family, friends, they're meeting up socially. Can you talk to us about what Singapore is doing in terms of Terminal 5 and the plans for the future?
Sure. Thanks, Monica. I think now Terminal 5 is in the works. We are expanding the terminal. I think as you saw from the forecast earlier, right? We are in the midst of a very fast-growing region. Right? India, China, Indonesia, they will be the top 5 markets in the future. So I think Singapore, from a geographical point of view, is right in the middle of this very fast dynamic zone. So I think we are really ramping up very fast to try to get T5 ready for that. It will be ready in the mid-2030s. I think coming out from COVID, I think we stopped the work for a couple of years, so now there's some catch-up. But allow us to also fine-tune our earlier plans to take into account some of these sustainability elements into our T5 plans. So I think we are very busy working on that. I think at the same time, we have this current plot until mid-2030s. So we are, again, like what Paul and Vivian said, trying to squeeze all the capacity that we can and work the assets really hard for this current plot. Thanks.
Absolutely. Paul, I think it's a good time to move to you. You know, you talked earlier about not all airports have the luxury to be able to just break ground and make another terminal. One of those is yours. You're kind of helmed in by the city. You're talking about using technology to work with what you've got. I want to ask you what specifically you're doing in order to ramp up for passenger growth in the future.
Certainly. Well, I think the first thing is that actually we do have a 168 square kilometre site earmarked for a new airport, Dubai World Central. In fact, it already has one runway and a passenger terminal. So we do have plans for an alternative airport site, and we are developing those at the moment. But I think the thing is that COVID-19 gave us a bit of an inflection point, and it also coincided with the acceleration of technical solutions to capacity management, which hadn't been available to the industry before. And I think the thing is, the industry is in danger of incrementally moving towards new infrastructure, and I think that could be a very expensive mistake. Because it's quite interesting, if you look at traditional airport design, airports that have been redeveloped over the last couple of decades have got some pretty major flaws, you know. We, as human beings, still have the same length of legs on average, so walking distances have become an enormous problem with larger airports. And I think we have to rethink that and use technology in a very different way. And what we are doing is trying to use all of the different technologies available to, as I was saying earlier, eliminate all those stress pinch points. Because the problem about airports is they are fundamentally illogical in their design. Because what we're doing is we're taking human beings, which are diverse, from several different individual origins. We're then forcing them through this sort of hourglass of a single pinch point, only to distribute them again to a huge range of different mass points. Why are we doing that? It's probably for the convenience and laziness of airport operators like myself. It's certainly not for passenger convenience. So should we not be using technology to rethink the intimacy of joining individual journeys at the point of origin with individual destinations? And my view is, instead of designing massive mega airports with huge terminals that we're forcing people to use, we should be looking at that many-to-many relationship, not the many-to-one-to-many. And my vision of the future infrastructure is for, say, 4 or 5 individual airports to be joined that are accessible from individual locations. And I think fast rail has got a very big part to play in joining this vision together. Because no one wants vast walking distances. You want the convenience of being able to go from your home or office to the closest point boarding your plane that you can get to. And I think that's why airports have to be designed with new technology to streamline the process and to have hubs with aircraft parked close by that are individually accessible rather than everyone going through a central processing point. The technology exists to be able to do that incrementally. It's a very good and non-disruptive way of planning future airport expansion if you've got the space to do it. But as I said earlier, I think some of the challenges of infrastructure is going to be the accelerating cost and the sustainability and political aspects, because particularly in developed countries like most of Europe, airport expansion is a major, major problem. But I think sustainable means of surface transport will make existing airport capacity in remote locations more accessible. You know, in developed countries like the UK and Europe, there are plenty of airfields, but unfortunately, because of the limitations of ground transportation, they're not really readily accessible, which is why people are forced to use large airports. If we can change that technology, and we've changed the technology in the air, you know, smaller, more economic aircraft is the way that the industry is going. There is a move away from the mega wide body market. So that probably means a renaissance for smaller airports if we can solve the surface access problems. Because, you know, as you said earlier, an airport is simply a means of translating a mode of transport from surface to air, and we need to rethink that in the light of new technology.
So from my understanding, a lot of the technology is sort of solving some of the pain points that we've got. The long line when you go to check into your airport, the long security line. We know the processes and we know what can happen. But what I did want to know if anybody on the stage had any ideas, and I think, Paul, you've answered my question. Does anybody think that this entire system needs a rethink? Rather than, you know, just we continue this 4-stage process and just make it, keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. So I'm interested to hear that. But if right now we're still operating with the, you know, process 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, I want to know what are the latest advancements in technology that can help on this. You know, we have contactless tech that was pushed through during the pandemic. Have we seen what all we're going to see in that front, or is there still work to be had? Is there still technology coming out? And I'll open this question to anybody on the panel.
Well, maybe let me contribute a little bit. I think that at this stage, there are technology available already. Right now, most of the jumbo airport, like hub airports, are using facial recognition, biometrics. Like in our airport, we call a single token from mobile check-in to check-in counter, security, immigration, and boarding. You just use your face, you know. And for those people eligible, actually 52% of our passengers are eligible to do that. So no more document taking out anymore. Although you think there's full process, but you don't feel so, right? You just walk through and there's no queue. And that's already in place. And next step, in fact, airport are talking about that. How about beyond the airport? When you get out of our airports, when you reach Narita, for example, they can use the same face and get out easily, vice versa. And this is happening. In fact, SITA is also helping on that. SITA have an application, allow people to register and go through the entire process easily. Yeah. So I think that this kind of technology is there already, and within a few more years, if the different process are willing to integrate, we're probably going to see less channel also. I think the biggest improvement needed is actually security area. You know, although that checking documents is simple now, but physically checking that security process still an issue. So I'm still hoping that, you know, very futuristic kind of security system allow you to just walk through what happened in the decade.
Yeah, maybe, thanks Vivian. Just to add a couple more points. I think biometric is able to facilitate the airport process. I think many of the airports have been adapted, tested, and it is working. So they see that some efficiency already in place. Now the border control centric, the challenges I think is been addressed, leveraging the digital travel credentials, which has been adapted, and ICAO has taken an initiative called TRIP, which is, I think, most of the airports and the immigration border controls are working together to facilitate this. So that's the second jigsaw puzzle kind of addressed. Mm-hmm. And the third, I think what Vivian said about the security. So security, I guess, requires a bit of investment for the airport. How how do you invest on a modern, secure, it's able to facilitate without taking out many things, and you are able to pass through. So I think with that, we see that the trend is there. And then we did some pilots in Aruba, for example, in Caribbean island, leveraging the digital travel credential. And partly now we see that happening in Hong Kong, and we see that largely happening in Australia, leveraging the biometric credentials. You could do your e-visas, you could process your digital token. When you walk into the airport, you can just breeze through. So that's happening. And then I wanted to give one more example with talking about the Paul's point. Big airports are capable of investing, but then what about the smaller ones, right? And then you want to connect a lot of smaller airports. Very interestingly, in India, for example, if I may use, because we all have the experience going through the smaller airports, the struggle which we've been witnessing for the longest period. They have adopted what is called DigiYatra, leveraging the biometric credentials. I want to use the example of Varanasi as one of the airports which has been adopted the biometrics. Now, biometric for domestic travel is almost 80% adoption. So not only just the experienced travelers, but the first-time travelers and aged population who are wanting to use it because that shows that progress, and they save a lot of time, and they see that ease of use of the technology can help them to breeze through the airport. So these are good examples, I think, will help to improve the operational efficiency.
So,
May I add
yes,
a
of course.
small point here. I personally think that biometrics, the passenger will change very, very soon. We have the technology, and I remember a long time ago, maybe someone knows the movie Total Recall, when they traveled to the moon, right? They just walked, yeah? And this is already here. We have that, similar, right? But I think one point which are missing, all of us a little, and this is what we tried to solve, what we couldn't, we failed, is the bag, yeah? So we have the passenger, and we need to have a solution for his bag, the baggage, what they're carrying with them. I give you an example what we did, but I have to say it was trial and fail. The idea was, as I said before, like in the train, yeah, to bring your bag to the aircraft. Yeah, very simple idea. So we did a small pilot. Why we stopped that? It's doable. Technology-wise, you can do it. It's not really difficult. We lost commercial revenue. Why? Because you're not going to buy anything if you have a bag until your gate, right? You need to feel more comfortable, and I learned very painful at that time. We are not an airport, we are a mall with a runway. At that time, it's a long time ago, it's 10, 15 years ago, but I think there is a potential. Right now, I don't know how to solve it, but I think if we have a good idea how we solve this process, because our process is really very old. We're doing the same thing since, I don't know, 50 years, right? So if we change that, if someone has a great idea, that will be the big change in our industry.
I'd like to pick up on that point, actually. And if you look in recent history, and you compare company values across the world by market cap compared to 10 years ago, and you look at the top 10 companies, look now, you've got Google, you've got Microsoft, you've got Apple, you've got NVIDIA, and those are all tech companies. And there's a clue here. If tech companies are ruling the world in terms of their power, and I think our problem is incremental thinking. And I think if you look at the Amazons, you look at the eBays, you look at the Ubers, they haven't grown incrementally. They've actually said, let's look at an industry and let's look at it afresh using today's technology. Let's not change it incrementally. And they've thrown everything up in the air. They've changed the entire relationship between consumer and supply chain. They've applied technology to engineer out all the legacy things, put things in the right order, and fundamentally change the way we shop, the way we hail a taxi, the way we live our lives. Now, do you think if Steve Jobs was still alive today, or Bill Gates was still at the peak of his career, do you think if they said, right, we want to take Microsoft or Apple into the airport space, that they would be designing an airport that looks anything like any of the airports that we subject our customers to today? I think the answer is absolutely no. We hear that Apple is scrapping the concept of electric cars because they can't find a point of difference that is big enough to justify them being in the market. Now, my advice, I think, to airport master planners and designers is put it in the bin. Let us start again and rethink from the customer backwards and say, if we were designing airports around our customer needs, what would they look like? And I think those brains would come up with something that looks very different to what we're using today, because the technology exists. And we've got to resist the temptation to say, right, we have the legacy process in this order, let's apply the technology to improve it. There has to be a better way of doing this, and the technology that we have today will enable us to be really fresh thinking, and I think that's what airports of the future are going to have to embrace. And that will be scalable. That will be scalable so small airports can use it as well as large ones, because the innate efficiency can be scalable up and down. That's, I think, the way it's got to look for the future.
Paul, I'd like to ask you a question. Maybe it's a particular soapbox of mine, but you've also gone on the record on this. When we talk about how much technology has changed, how the airplanes alone, how much is the world is capable of, but yet we're still getting on planes the same way. To me as a passenger, and we're all passengers, right? You're all in aviation, but yet you're also passengers. The getting on the airplane is makes me laugh that we can't figure out better ways to do this. I know for you, for Dubai, until you hit that tipping point that you will then move to another airport. Until then, and it looks like there could be really big things coming from that airport. But until then, how do you get on board with your airlines to try to get that processing time, their turnaround time, so that you can get even more passengers through your airport quicker?
Well, I think you have to start with the fundamental process of check-in. Why on earth are we checking in? How many other products do we buy and consume on a regular basis where at the point of sale you don't complete everything and the only thing left is for the good or service to be delivered? It's just fundamentally insane, in my view, that airlines have so much contact with you before you actually use their products. So, and a lot of low-cost carriers now are capturing everything. They're issuing boarding passes, they're checking you in, they're capturing all your passport information at the point of sale. That has to be surely a hygiene factor that we all embrace. And then I think the point about baggage is a good one. That should be taken from the customer at the earliest possible point and return to them at the latest possible point. And I think Hong Kong's been a great leader in this with the rail integration, which they've managed to do on departure. And I think what needs to happen now is that rail integration needs to happen on arrival. And I think actually, as I said earlier, rail plays a huge part in being able to have this many-to-many relationship. And I think, as I said, the scale of airports getting ever bigger. I mean, if you've ever walked through some of the major hubs in the US and Europe in particular, the walking distances are vast. And that's a problem. That's why the inefficiency of the boarding process is so difficult, because you need so much time to navigate these vast airports. Why can there not be multiple drop-off points facilitated by rail integration much, much closer to your aeroplane, so you can actually make every journey far more intimate? You know, a lot of the new tech in retail is personalizing the relationship between the consumer and the product. You know, BMW have done it for years, mass customizations of millions of cars, so that every car is actually individually specified, but it's done at scale. But each customer feels as though they have a unique relationship. Should be the same with airlines and airports, where we can regain that intimacy of the small airport at scale. Technology can deliver that, I think.
I think maybe I jump into Paul's point as well. I think the other challenge for airports is that Actually, we serve a huge, diverse range of consumers, right? You have people, let's say for Changi, our top markets include China, Indonesia, India, Australia. So there's a huge range of consumers. From the Singapore-based consumers, people are mobile savvy. They are used to self-tagging their bags and self-check-in. Yet, on the other hand, you have non-English speakers who may have problems navigating multi-generational travel. So I think in Asia, we have all along prioritized the hospitality, the human touch. In the past, where we have more customers coming through our immigration, we used to have little candy for them to take. So those are the human touch. Now with automation, you lose some of that human touch, right? So the challenge is, how can you make technology to overcome that? So give you an example. So now when you go through immigration at Changi, you do the passport and you go to auto gate. But if they detect you're having an Indonesian passport, the instructions come out in Bahasa Indonesia. So we lose something, we gain something, right? You lose some of this human touch of face-to-face, and you can have this intimacy, like what Paul mentioned, to have customized language to your preference. So you try to give and take a bit. So in the end, I think it's not so much just about the technology, but about some of this user interface, how to, exactly as Paul said, how to get the intimacy, even though you're using technology and you're pumping big numbers through the airport. I think that's why you get a sweet spot, that's the challenge.
Monica, let me contribute also from another angle. I think that we do study on the recovery. We noticed that the passenger behavior now, we call it K-shape, right? K-shape, why quite a amount of passengers are looking for high value type of service and other type that don't bother me. You know, I just want to do my own things. So we have product to focus on this K-shaped type of service. For example, for a long while, we have in-town check-in. So for businessmen, they are very easy to just drop their bag and continue their conferences and enjoy their travel. And we start kick off also home baggage pickup service. You know, our view or our vision is that, in fact, the entire journey for the passenger, they should enjoy the journey. It's just like starting their travel already. Our terminal design should be like a holiday camp. You know, although you want to make it very efficient, but you also want to make that they want to spend more time in there to enjoy themselves. And but then baggage, how do you handle baggage? That's a problem. So we want to solve that problem from the beginning. So pick one from their home. Of course, K-shape, you see high value seeking passenger, they're willing to do that. They get rid of their bag right away. So we have over 30 in-town check-in center all over the GBA, China, you know, Southern China. They can drop their bag right away and off their hand. The next time they see their bag will be London. So I think eventually this model will work for at least high-value seeker passenger. For low-end or cost concern kind of passenger, I mean, they probably start to travel light and they want to enjoy. In fact, those passengers are much younger. We talk about X or Z generation. They have a very short trip for 2 days, go to exact place just to have fun. And we have to create different kind of process for them. Facial recognition, you know, different kind of software. They can do everything themselves. And they have last-minute checking. They can buy the last-minute tickets. And so we are focusing different kind of product for different people. And at the end, I think that most important that when we want them to enjoy their journey, even though that during their 45 minutes inside the terminal. Yeah.
You know, with the issue with baggage, if you travel like I do and you have more baggage than you likely need, you're happy to get rid of it. But when you have a summer like the one before last, where we had all of the baggage issues that we saw, I would imagine you have a fair share of customers who aren't really wanting to release that baggage to you because they just want to make sure that it doesn't get lost. Sanjeev, I know SITA's been working on some pilot programs to try to help passengers. Part of that is real-time communication, which I have to think if Apple was designing an airport today, real-time communication would be part of that. Sanjeev, can you tell us about what SITA's working on regarding that?
Yeah, I think since the recovery, I guess everybody is tech-savvy and they've been familiar with ordering Uber and they can track their meal, they can track their... And I think that people, when they travel now, they want to know where the bags are. I think often some of the airlines are doing a good job, feeding that information, but some of the airlines, they are catching up. I guess Changi is a good example. I think they piloted, they want to notify all bags checked in, and then you can, look through your app. So I think what happens is we have all the data today based on all the tech which we use at the airport and the airlines. And then now, what is the mode of data transfer we do it to the passenger? How do we make them see this visible, that where is their bag? Because this is the biggest concern, and especially people who are traveling, long haul, and they have to do a transfer, and then they are a bit scared of checking in their bags, right? Mm-hmm. So we started doing this auto notification, and then we could notify the passengers where the bags are, and even if it is delayed, and then you can proactively notify them saying that your bag is being, sorry, we missed it. We will, rush your bag into the next flight. So all this proactive communication, giving that real-time information available for the passenger, I think gives you that experience. And then also saves a lot of effort for airport and airline staff digging through where it is, right? And then because customers are worried, and in here, by doing the automation, leveraging and tracking the bags and then pushing that through, it helps. And then we did that pilot with the Lufthansa in Germany. Then basically, I think we noticed the last year, almost about 40,000 bags has been reflighted automatically, without stressing so much to the ground handlers and the airport operation, customer service, reduce the number of millions of calls which passengers need to worry about their bag. And the more interesting fact is airlines saved huge amount of money because reflighting and penalties and so on.
So it's a big money saver, but it prevents passengers from that dreaded feeling when you're standing there, everybody on your flight is taking their luggage, and you have to wait to realize, oh no, yours isn't there. So
This is another problem of legacy thinking, though, isn't it? Because in this day and age, why are we still attaching paper tags to bags and assigning a code to them just for that flight? The other thing, and I'm sure my colleague here from SITA will confirm, the records relating to baggage get wiped from airline reservation systems within about 24 hours of the flight supposedly being completed. So you lose the trace of the bag. Why are bags, when they're manufactured, not given an individual VIN number like a car? So they're automatically traceable wherever they are on whichever airline they're flying, and you actually just put that number into the flight record. So that bag is permanently yours. And then it's traceable at any time for any flight. I mean, if anyone's got an Apple tag in their bag, it's fascinating because you can watch on your phone and see whether your bag is actually on the plane with you. And that's quite reassuring when it is, and horribly not reassuring when it isn't. But you see, that's, I think, the other problem, is not only are we using legacy systems, but we're also using pretty appalling recovery when those things go wrong. I mean, if you've ever tried to retrieve a bag from a major airport, which I won't name, but it's quite near London, it's a nightmare because they use third-party services which don't answer the phone, and it can take a week to get a bag back. And that's just not good enough in this day and age. And with current technology, there's no excuse for it. And I think the problem is, post-recovery, a lot of airports cut back hugely on their staffing levels, and they're just not able to recover when service irregularities occur. So I think the investment has to be stop things going wrong in the first place, and then the need to invest so much in recovery systems is alleviated.
I think that
a quick one. There are some solutions already existing. I should not say that, but if I'm traveling, all of us are waiting to give our bag away, right? So I have a small token, a device, I throw it in my bag so I know exactly where it is, right? So we have the technology. And what we are going to do now, in our case, old thing happened with the charter airlines in Germany. I worked for a charter carrier, tourism destination, and we did a hotel check-in at that time. That happened 30 years ago, right? So with the technology now, you can do it now. We are starting a small pilot, well, with the hotels around Cebu, using technology to do that very soon this year. And this is, what is the advantage? It's customer experience, and they are spending more money in the terminal, right? Which is for us a main revenue stream.
I just want to stimulate, really think out the box solution. You look at all major hub airport, we put a major piece of property, a large terminal space just for check-in. Now check-in is already automated. You can use your mobile phone, check-in at home.
Yeah.
But luggage, you still have a large piece of property just to handle the luggage. But look at right now, e-commerce. E-commerce, the cost of logistics is so low. Shipping piece of baggage, probably only single dollars. Yeah. Eventually, I think passenger will be happy to just carry a small piece of luggage with them, but the big trunk of luggage can go with e-commerce easily. Arrive your destination hotel or home. I think that model will change the entire process of the airport. I think that's the think out the box solution. We are pushing that in Hong Kong. We think that terminal should be anywhere inside the city. You can check in 7-Eleven.
Good point.
Right? Checking your baggage in 7-Eleven if you cannot pick up at home. In fact, our pickup luggage service is, we have a collaboration with our local logistics company, Sunfeng. They pick up everywhere because they already have a network all over the city. They also have partner over the other city, so they can do door to door. I think eventually, to reduce our massive investment in our terminal, that's a major chunk of the property we can take it out.
Yeah, ultimately I agree that it comes to the creativity and the partnership of different ecosystem players. I think the reality is that unlike the Apple system, which is a closed ecosystem, for the airport, there's an airport, there are airlines and different airlines, and some of the systems don't talk to each other. So I think like-minded partners coming together can come up with good solution. So for example, like in the case of Changi, Singapore is also a key cruise hub. And for the cruises that are coming to Singapore, like for example, Disney cruise that's coming next year, some of the passengers are from Singapore, a lot are fly-in passengers. So for the airport, I think since we opened Jewel in 2019, we have an arrival lounge there. So working with a cruise operator, someone flying from, for example, for Australia, coming in, going to take Disney cruise, we are working behind the scenes with the cruise operator, with the ground handler, so that the luggage comes in on the flight, goes out, goes straight to your cruise ship. So you don't have to handle all this intermodal shift, and then for the passenger, it's a seamless experience. So I think this kind of product with the right imagination and the right partners coming in, I think can get the solutions that the desired outcome that Vivian has mentioned.
I think that's key. Orlando used to do that for visitors to Walt Disney World, which of course is like a city unto itself. And then they stopped, and I know that this was wildly unpopular amongst tourists because they were used to that system. But anyway, I want to also, we're talking about how the systems that can help passengers, and that is very interesting because I think we all are looking for a little bit of assistance here. But I also want to go to the back of the house operations. A lot of what makes an airport run fluidly will never be in the sight of a passenger. I want to talk about some of the greatest innovations that you're either planning on or that you have implemented to make behind the scenes run as smooth as possible.
Perhaps then I contribute that. I think, of course, in back of the house, everyone is facing the manpower issue. So technology will help us to reduce that dependency on people. So we have started this autonomous vehicle journey 3 years ago. And now the operation very smoothly, we run 2 years. Starting first phase to help us to just take the baggage from basement to apron somewhere. Now we're already in the third phase. The second phase is also taking the cargo because it's heavier. You have an electrified autonomous vehicle, heavier is more difficult. Then the third phase, already implement heavier, is the shuttle bus for the staff. And the fourth phase, we're starting end of this year and next year, we'll go to landside and taking people from the border all the way to our airport. So this journey telling us this is a very reliable system, in fact, help us to reduce cost and reduce dependency on passenger. So this is very important, I think, a journey for us, and we also are trying to help to introduce this technology to others to use. As we will see, like more airport using this kind of technology and cost will reduce, and we can use even more of this kind of a tool to help us.
I think one of the problems is that an airport's a very large and complex business. It's actually a city, and there's no one person in charge. One of the biggest problems I think any airport operator has is there's far too many disparate stakeholders, people that are motivated by other things other than delighting the customer. And I think what we've done is we've invested a huge amount of time in getting everyone on the same page. We have a program called 1DXB, which we have an award annually, which we've just presented, where all of the stakeholders contribute towards ideas to make things better. And as a result of that, everyone's measured on the same things. They're measured on excellence in customer service delivery. I mean, the average lost bag rate across the industry is about 7.5 bags in 1,000. Now, if utility companies had a 7.5% failure rate, we'd spend a lot of our year in the dark. And that's unacceptable. So we've managed to engineer that down to about between 1% and 2%, which is good. But there is help coming. Infrastructure is going to be used in a very different way in the future, and it's driven by new technology. If you look at historics about airports being so large, they are so large because aircraft economics were driven by scale. Larger aeroplanes meant lower seat mile costs, and if airlines were prepared to take the commercial risk, they could offer much, much cheaper and more competitive product to their customers. That's gone now. Composite materials and new engine technology is making smaller aircraft the kings of the sky now. They are far, far more efficient than their larger cousins, and they are capable of carrying people over much longer distances. That's going to lead a revolution in airports in the future. We'll see a lot more long-haul service from smaller airports. So I think the load will be distributed, which means smaller airports will be more competitive, and with new technology, we'll be able to offer intimacy to customers that larger airports can't unless they change their business model. So I think changing tech will drive the face of the industry, and airports have to get with the program or be seen as the dinosaurs a lot of them have been up to now.
A very small development in the last 10 years, which I personally like a lot, is the heat maps, which we have most of us in our airport, right? Where you see really how long our passenger is waiting, it becomes red. You have, after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, everyone has a different time. And this is something which will give us a chance, not only to predict what is coming up, right? Queues and check-in will come later on the immigration or emigration, as well for commercial. So because we are seeing them really what they are doing, where they are. This is for me one of the greatest developments in the last 10 years, which are behind the scene, and the passenger doesn't know that. Yeah. Sorry.
I think that besides talk about automation, another very important thing I think all our airports are using is the data. How to use data to help us even further to enhance our process. And AI is one thing that everyone talking about. You know, almost every process we are applying, trying to apply AI to help us to predict and make better decisions, even shorter the process time. And besides AI, 5G, we implement the entire 5G in our airport. That will help us to do autonomous vehicle and collecting data, doing digital apron, and share all this with our stakeholder. Similar as Paul, we united all the stakeholders in our airport. We do airside equipment pooling, do data sharing. All this just will enhance airport efficiency in order to maximize our throughput in this small piece of property.
Thank you. We are out of time now, but I want to thank each of you, Athanasios, Vivian, Sanjeev, Paul, Ching, Kiat. Thank you so much for telling us at least that help is on the way, and for providing help for other people in the aviation industry that change may be afoot. Maybe not tomorrow, but in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you
nice
so much.
meeting you.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. Very interesting.
Hope that we can